Hello everyone and welcome back to Shadowman Stories. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now, let's get you comfortable and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Marcus Youngblood and I've been a ranger at Denali National Park for 13 years. I thought I'd seen everything these mountains could throw at me. I was wrong. Let me tell you something about Alaska in late September. The darkness comes early and stays late. Up here at Wonder Lake, 85 miles into the park's interior, you get maybe 6 hours of weak daylight. The rest is just cold and black, and the northern lights dancing overhead like ghosts. I'm half Athabascan, half Norwegian. My grandfather taught me to hunt and track when I was 8 years old. He also told me stories about Tornarsuk, the great bear spirit that supposedly wandered these mountains, feeding on human souls. I never believed those stories. Not then. My son Danny was 17 that year. Smart kid, wanted to go to college in Anchorage. The overtime from these deep wilderness patrols helped fill his college fund. That's why I volunteered for the Wonder Lake rotation when the regular guy got sick. 3 weeks alone in the most remote corner of the park. Good money. Easy work for someone with my experience. I drove my snow machine out there on September 23rd. The temperature was already hitting -10 at night. The tundra stretched out forever, low bushes, scattered spruce trees no taller than me, and permafrost that crunched under my boots. Beautiful in a harsh way, peaceful. The research station sat on a small rise overlooking the lake. 5 biologists had been camping there for 2 weeks, studying grizzly feeding patterns before hibernation. They radioed in every evening at 6 o'clock. Standard procedure. On September 24th, they didn't call. I tried raising them on the radio. Nothing. Could have been the Aurora. It messes with electronics sometimes. Could have been dead batteries. Could have been a lot of things. But something in my gut twisted. My grandfather used to say the old spirit spoke through feelings, not words. I ignored it. Professional rangers don't operate on gut feelings. I waited until morning to check on them. The ride took 3 hours through rough terrain. The whole way, I didn't see a single animal. No ptarmigan, no Arctic foxes, not even ravens. The silence felt thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. When I reached their camp, everything looked normal at first glance. 3 tents, equipment stacked neatly, a fire pit with cold ashes. But nobody home. 5 people don't just wander off in the wilderness without their gear. Then I saw the tracks. Bear tracks. Grizzly, probably. But wrong. All wrong. I've tracked hundreds of bears in my career. I know their prints like I know my own son's face. These tracks were massive, 18 inches across, maybe more. The biggest grizzly prints I'd ever seen were 12 inches. But size wasn't what made my hands shake as I knelt beside them. The tracks formed patterns. Perfect geometric patterns. Circles around the camp. Straight lines between the tents. Bears don't walk like that. Bears shamble and wander. They don't march in formation. I followed the tracks to the east side of camp. They led straight to a cliff face, a sheer granite wall rising 200 feet. The tracks went right up to the rock and stopped. Just stopped. Like whatever made them had walked through solid stone. My radio crackled with static. "Marcus, can you hear?" I grabbed it. "Tommy, that you?" More static. Then silence. Tommy Nakamura was the rookie ranger back at headquarters. Good kid, still learning. I searched the camp thoroughly. Sleeping bags were there, food was there, weapons were there. These researchers knew to carry bear spray and firearms. 5 people's entire lives, just sitting there waiting for them to come back. In the largest tent, I found Dr. Sarah Chen's notebook. The last entry was dated September 23rd, 5:47 p.m. Movement outside, biggest damn grizzly I've ever seen, standing on 2 legs like a man. Mike's getting the camera. This is incredible. That was it. That was the last thing any of them wrote. I spent that night in my own tent, half a mile from their camp. Kept my rifle loaded and my grandfather's bone-handled knife close. The knife had been in our family for 4 generations. Grandfather said it was blessed by a shaman made to fight spirits. I'd always carried it as a good luck charm, nothing more. That night, I didn't sleep. The darkness was absolute. No moon, just stars and the green curtains of aurora rippling across the sky. And in that darkness, I heard something moving, something big. The footsteps were wrong, too slow, too deliberate, like something thinking about where to step next. I didn't look outside. Some animal instinct told me that looking would be a mistake. When morning finally came, I found new tracks circling my tent, the same impossible 18-inch prints, walking in a perfect circle, round and round and round, maybe 50 times. I counted. Something had watched me sleep. Park headquarters sent a second team 3 days later. I'd radioed in about the missing researchers, and they scrambled everyone they could spare. 4 rangers, all experienced, all armed. They flew in by helicopter, couldn't land at Wonder Lake because of the terrain, so they set down 5 miles south and hiked in. I met them at the original research camp. Nobody had touched anything. The tracks were still there, frozen into the hard ground. "Jesus," said Ranger Bill Halford, a 20-year veteran. He knelt by the prints. "What the hell makes tracks like this?" "Don't know," I said. "But whatever it is, it took 5 people." "Took them where?" "That was Angela Martinez, tough as nails, scared of nothing." I pointed at the cliff. "Tracks end there." They searched for 2 days. Professional, thorough, by the book. We found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no evidence of struggle. Just those tracks, and silence, and the feeling that something was watching us. On the second night, the temperature dropped to -20. We huddled in 2 tents, taking shifts for watch duty. I took the midnight to 3 a.m. shift with Bill. We sat by a small propane heater, drinking coffee that tasted like metal. "You ever hear the local stories?" I asked him. "What stories?" "About Tornarsuk, the great bear spirit." Bill snorted. "You don't believe that stuff, do you, Marcus? You've got a degree in wildlife biology." "My grandfather believed it." "Your grandfather also thought you could predict weather by watching spiders." He wasn't wrong, but sitting there in the dark, listening to the wind, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were the ones being studied, like we were the specimens now. At 2:17 a.m. by my watch, the aurora exploded overhead. Brilliant greens and purples brighter than I'd ever seen, beautiful and terrible at the same time. That's when we heard it. A roar, but not like any bear I'd ever heard. This sound had depth to it, like it was coming from underground and from the sky at the same time. It vibrated in my chest, made my teeth hurt. Bill grabbed his rifle. "What the—" The radio crackled. All 3 of them, mine, Bill's, Angela's in the other tent. They all crackled at once, spitting static. Then voices came through. Human voices. "Help us. Please. It's so cold. Can't see." I recognized one of the voices. Dr. Sarah Chen. "Sarah?" I grabbed the radio. "Sarah Chen, is that you? Where are you?" "Inside. We're inside. It won't let us go. Marcus, it's hungry." So hungry. The signal died. Just like that. Dead silence. Angela and the other two rangers burst out of their tent. Did you hear that? Did you hear those voices? We all heard it. 5 researchers missing for 6 days, somehow broadcasting on our frequency, saying they were inside something. Bill tried to be rational. Could be someone playing games with us, recorded voices, some sicko trying to scare us. But I saw the fear in his eyes. We all felt it. The next morning we found Angela's tent torn open, not cut or unzipped, torn, like something had grabbed the heavy canvas and ripped it apart with claws. The holes in the fabric were big enough to put my fist through. Angela was gone. Her rifle was still there. Her knife was still there. Her boots were still in the tent. She'd been sleeping in her long underwear, and somehow something had taken her without waking any of us. We found her tracks in the snow outside, bare feet, running east toward the cliff. Then we found the other tracks, the 18-inch prints walking calmly behind her, following her like a man following a dog. Both sets of tracks went to the cliff face and disappeared. Bill was done with rational explanations. His hands shook as he loaded flares into his gun. We're leaving. Now. We're hiking back to the helicopter and getting the hell out of here. What about Angela? One of the others asked. Angela's dead, Bill said flatly. Or worse. We can't help her. We need to leave before... The roar came again, closer this time, so close I could feel it in my bones. We turned toward the sound. There, standing on top of the cliff, 200 feet straight up, was something that made my brain refuse to process what my eyes were seeing. It looked like a bear. Grizzly, maybe. But it stood 12 feet tall on its hind legs. Its fur wasn't brown. It was black, but not regular black. It was the black of deep space, of absolute nothing. And in that darkness, points of light moved, like stars, like the aurora had gotten trapped in its coat. The thing tilted its head, looking down at us, studying us. Then it stepped off the cliff. It didn't fall. It walked down the vertical rock face like the wall was flat ground. Slow, deliberate steps. Those impossible paws gripping stone that should have been too smooth to grip. We ran. We made it half a mile before Bill collapsed. Heart attack. Just dropped in the snow, clutching his chest. The fear had been too much for him. I tried CPR, tried everything I knew. But out there, in minus 20 degrees, with no medical equipment, there was nothing I could do. Bill Halford died in my arms while the other 2 rangers stood watch, rifles pointed at every shadow. We heard the footsteps then. Slow and steady, crunch, 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 through the snow. Marcus, one of the rangers whispered. His name was Pete Chen, no relation to Dr. Sarah Chen, just bad luck with names. Marcus, what do we do? The footsteps were getting closer. But we couldn't see anything, just empty tundra and the green aurora overhead. Move, I said. Leave Bill. We have to move. We ran again, 3 of us now, running through the darkness with headlamps bouncing. Behind us, we heard Bill's body being dragged, the sound of something heavy being pulled across frozen ground. We didn't look back. The helicopter was 4 miles away, 4 miles of open ground with nowhere to hide. We pushed ourselves harder than humans should be able to move, fear giving us strength we didn't know we had. 2 miles in, the 3rd ranger, a quiet guy named Tom Wu, just stopped running. Keep going, he said. Tom, we can't. I said keep going. He pointed his rifle back the way we came. I'll hold it off. Buy you time. Tom, I got kids, Marcus. 2 daughters. You got a son. Pete's got a wife. We're not all dying out here. Now go." Pete and I ran. We heard Tom's rifle start firing. 3 shots, 5 shots, 7 shots, then silence, then screaming, then worse than screaming, laughter. Tom Wu laughing like he'd heard the funniest joke in the world, laughing until his voice cracked and broke. Then nothing. Pete and I reached the helicopter as the sun was coming up. Pale gray, light spreading across the tundra. The helicopter was covered in frost. The pilot was dead in his seat, frozen solid. But something was wrong with how he froze. His mouth was open in a scream, and his eyes were staring at something in the back seat. The back seat was empty. "Oh God," Pete whispered. "Oh God, Marcus, we have to..." The temperature dropped. I mean, it really dropped, like someone opened a door to space. My breath froze in the air. The moisture in my eyes started to ice over. It was behind us. I turned slowly. The thing stood 30 feet away, and in the dawn light, I could see it clearly for the first time. It was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. The proportions were off. Legs too long, arms too long, head too big. The claws were the size of kitchen knives. The eyes weren't bare eyes. They were human eyes. Dozens of them blinking in the fur, looking at us, looking through us. And in those eyes I saw the researchers. I saw Angela. I saw Bill. I saw Tom. All of them staring out from inside the creature, trapped, conscious, aware. Pete raised his rifle and fired. The bullet hit the thing square in the chest. We both saw it hit. We both saw the wound appear. And we both watched as the hole closed up like water flowing back together. The creature opened its mouth. All the voices came out at once. 5 researchers, Angela, Bill, Tom, and others I didn't recognize. Dozens of voices speaking together. "Marcus Youngblood, grandson of Grey Wolf. We remember your family. Your grandfather almost killed us 50 years ago. We've been waiting and hungry." Pete ran. He made it 5 steps before the thing moved, faster than anything that size should move. One moment, it was 30 feet away. The next moment, it was on top of Pete, and Pete was screaming, and then Pete was being absorbed into the thing's body like snow melting into water. I ran, too. Not away from it. I knew I couldn't outrun it. I ran toward the only shelter I could see, an old Athabascan hunting cabin 1/2 mile north. My grandfather had shown it to me when I was 12. Sacred ground, he'd said, protected by the old ways. I didn't believe in the old ways, not really, but I was out of options. The cabin was barely standing, rotted logs, collapsed roof on one side. But carved into every surface were symbols I recognized from my grandfather's teachings. Protection symbols, bear wards, prayers in old Athabascan. I stumbled inside and the temperature immediately felt warmer. Not physically warmer, the cold was still there. But the pressure was different, like stepping into a church. Outside the thing circled. Round and round the cabin, those massive paws leaving tracks in the snow. I could hear all the voices whispering, crying, begging. "Please, Marcus, help us. It hurts. We're so cold. Let us in." My radio crackled. Tommy's voice came through, crystal clear, despite the distance. "Marcus, Marcus, if you can hear me, Headquarters is sending a rescue team. Weather's clearing. They'll be there by noon. Just hold on, okay? Just hold on." I looked at my watch. 7 a.m., 5 hours to survive. The thing outside roared. The cabin shook, but it couldn't come inside. That's when I knew my grandfather's stories weren't stories. Tornarsuk was real, and it remembered my family. I found my grandfather's journal in the cabin, wrapped in oilcloth, hidden in a gap between logs. I'd never known it was there. The entries were in Athabascan and English, mixed together. I read them by the light of my dying headlamp. September 1917, it came again. Took 3 men from our hunting party. I tracked it to the Valley of Bones, the place our shamans forbade us to enter. The burial ground where our people sent the corrupted ones, those who broke the greatest taboos. The Americans disturbed it last year with their survey equipment. They woke something up. The bear spirit feeds on life, not just bodies, souls. It traps them inside itself, uses their energy to stay in our world, gets bigger with each one it takes. After 50 years of feeding, it goes back to sleep. 50 years of hunting, then 50 years of rest. I wounded it with the sacred knife, drew blood that burned like acid. It retreated, but not dead. Never dead, just waiting. Waiting for the next cycle. If it comes back, my son or grandson must finish it. The knife must pierce its heart 3 times while speaking the banishment prayer. 3 times, or it won't work. 1 strike for the body, 1 strike for the spirit, 1 strike for the hunger. The creature is strongest at night, weakest at dawn. But dawn only lasts minutes up here. You'll have 1 chance. Don't miss. The last entry was dated October 1917. My grandfather had been 23 years old. I looked at the knife on my belt. Bone handle, iron blade. The metal was dark, stained with something that wasn't rust. My watch said 9 a.m., 3 hours until the rescue team. But I knew they wouldn't arrive in time. The thing outside was getting stronger. I could feel it. The cabin walls were starting to frost over from the inside. The temperature was dropping despite the protection symbols. And I could hear my son's voice now, mixed in with all the others. "Dad? Dad, where are you? It's so cold, Dad. It's so dark. Please help me." But Danny was safe in Anchorage. I'd called him 3 days ago. He was fine. "That's not real," I said out loud. "You can't have him." The voices laughed, dozens of mouths laughing together. "Not yet, but we will. We know where he is. We can wait. 50 years means nothing to us. We'll take him. We'll take his children. We'll take everyone you love, Marcus Youngblood, unless you come outside." I thought about my grandfather, 23 years old, facing this thing alone. He'd wounded it, driven it away. But he hadn't killed it, and, for 50 years exactly, it had slept. Until the research team showed up with their equipment, until they disturbed the burial ground, until they woke it up. This was my fault. I'd approved the research permit. I'd told them Wonder Lake was safe. I checked my rifle. Useless. Bullets didn't work. I checked my radio. Dead. I checked my watch. 9:30 a.m. The sun was rising higher. Dawn was over, but the thing outside would be weak for a few more hours, weaker than at night. If I was going to do this, it had to be now. I picked up my grandfather's knife. The bone handle felt warm in my hand. The blade caught the light and seemed to glow just slightly. Maybe I imagined it. I spoke to the voices outside. "I'm coming out, but you let them go first. All of them. Every person you've taken. You let them go, and you can have me instead." Silence. Then, "We don't negotiate with prey. You will this time, because I have something you remember." I held up the knife. My grandfather's blade, the one that made you bleed, the one that made you run. More silence. Then slowly, "Your grandfather was strong. Are you as strong as he was, Marcus Youngblood? Guess we'll find out." I stepped outside. The creature stood in the center of the clearing, fully visible in the late morning sun, 12 feet tall, covered in that impossible star-filled darkness, eyes everywhere, watching me. "Your terms," it said with 100 voices. "Single combat, old way. You and me. I win. You let everyone go and sleep for another 50 years. You win. You get my soul and my family's line forever. The thing seemed to consider this. Then it nodded, a disturbingly human gesture. Agreed. Your grandfather made the same bargain. He lost. But he lived. For a price. He gave us part of himself, his future, his years. We took 30 years of life from him. That's why he died young, Marcus. We ate his time. My grandfather had died at 53. Heart attack while hunting. I'd been 15. Then let's finish what he started, I said. The attack came fast. One moment the creature was 30 feet away. The next, it was on me. I dove left, felt claws rake my jacket. Rolled, came up running. Can't outrun it, I thought. Can't outfight it. Have to outsmart it. I ran for the cliff, the same cliff where the tracks had disappeared. The thing followed fast and steady. I could hear it breathing if it breathed. Could smell it, like ozone and rot and frozen metal. At the cliff base I turned. It was right there. Massive, terrifying, hungry. I held up the knife. Come on then, come take what you want. It lunged. I sidestepped, barely fast enough. The knife flashed out. I felt it connect, felt it slice through that impossible fur. The creature screamed, all the voices screaming at once. Real pain. Black blood sprayed across the snow. Where it landed, the ground died. Plants withered. Snow turned gray. One strike for the body, I whispered, remembering my grandfather's words. The thing was faster now, angry now. It swung a massive paw. I ducked, but not quite fast enough. Claws caught my shoulder, ripped through clothing and skin and muscle. Hot blood on cold air. I stumbled. It pressed the attack. I was bleeding badly, getting weak, getting slow. It pinned me against the cliff face. Those human eyes, dozens of them, all staring into mine. I could see the people inside, really see them. They were aware, conscious, suffering. Submit, the voices said. Join us. The pain ends when you join us. I thought of Danny, thought of my grandfather, thought of everyone this thing had taken. No, I said. I drove the knife up under its ribs where a heart should be. One strike for the spirit. The creature convulsed. More black blood, more screaming. It threw me 20 feet. I hit the ground hard, felt ribs crack. Can't breathe, can't move. The thing was wounded but not finished. It staggered toward me, slower now but still deadly. I forced myself up, grabbed the knife from where it had fallen, faced the creature one last time. Last strike, I said, for the hunger. We met in the middle. It swung, I ducked. It bit, I dodged. And then I saw the opening. Just for a second, its chest exposed as it reared up. I drove the knife in with both hands, straight into its heart. Felt the blade sink deep, all the way to the bone handle. I banish you, I said in Athabascan, the words coming from somewhere deep in memory. Words my grandfather had taught me. I banish you to sleep and stone. I banish you from flesh and bone. I send you down to darkness old. Return when stars fall and mountains fold. The creature froze. The eyes, all those human eyes, went wide. Then, one by one, they closed. Bodies fell from its form like shadows peeling away. Real bodies, solid and breathing. The 5 researchers, Angela, Bill, Tom, Pete, others I didn't know. Dozens of people, stretching back decades. The creature collapsed. As it fell, it turned to ash. Gray ash that blew away in the wind. The knife fell from my hands. The blade cracked and blackened. I fell too. The cold was intense now. I'd lost too much blood. The world was getting dark. I heard helicopters, heard shouting, felt someone pick me up. The last thing I saw before passing out was my grandfather standing on the cliff above, young and strong and smiling. Good job, boy, he said. "Now rest." I woke up 3 weeks later in Anchorage General Hospital. Danny was sitting beside my bed, reading a textbook. When he saw my eyes open, he dropped the book and grabbed my hand. "Dad, oh God, Dad, you're awake." The doctors said it was a miracle I survived. Hypothermia, massive blood loss, broken ribs, collapsed lung. They'd found me barely alive, clutching a broken knife, surrounded by confused survivors who had no memory of being taken. The official report blamed an avalanche, freak weather conditions, temporary mass hallucination from carbon monoxide poisoning. The Park Service bought it because the alternative was impossible. Only Tommy Nakamura knew different. He'd listened to the radio transmissions. He'd heard the voices. One night, he visited my hospital room after Danny had gone home. "It was real, wasn't it?" he asked. "Everything." I looked at him. Good kid, still learning, still had years ahead of him. "Yeah," I said, "it was real." Is it dead?" I thought about my grandfather's journal, 50 years of feeding, 50 years of rest, the cycle. "No," I said, "just sleeping, waiting." Tommy went pale. "For how long?" 50 years, give or take." "What do we do?" I looked at my hands. They'd aged, wrinkled, spotted. The doctors said it was frostbite damage, but I knew better. The creature had taken its price, just like it had with my grandfather. I could feel it. 30 years of my life gone, used as fuel to banish the thing. I was 34. I looked 54 now. I had maybe 20 years left if I was lucky. "We watch," I said. "We remember. And when 2017 comes around, we make damn sure nobody disturbs that burial ground." I transferred to a desk job 6 months later. Couldn't handle the field work anymore. My body was too old, too broken. But I kept the park maps in my office, kept records of every expedition, every research permit, every hiker who went into the Wonder Lake area. Danny went to college, got married, had kids of his own. I taught them the old stories, made them memorize the protection prayers. They thought Grandpa was just being traditional, sharing his culture. They didn't know they might need it someday. The knife, what was left of it, I buried in the old cabin where my grandfather's journal had been. Let the next generation find it when the time comes. Sometimes on winter nights when the aurora is bright, I drive out to the park boundary. Just watching, just listening. The survivors don't remember what took them, but I do. I remember every scream, every voice, every eye staring out from inside that thing. And sometimes, very rarely, when the wind is right and the temperature drops just so, I hear it. Distant, faint, sleeping but not gone. Tornarsuk, the great bear. Waiting for 2017. I'll be dead by then, but my son will be alive. My grandchildren will be alive. And they'll have the stories. They'll have the prayers. They'll have the truth. Because that's what we do. We remember. We watch. We pass it down. Some hungers never die. They just wait. And in Alaska, the waiting can last a very long time. My name is Elena Volkov, and I've been a ranger in Alaska for 8 years. That's long enough to know that the ocean doesn't care about your plans, and the forest doesn't care about your fears. But I learned something else out here, something my grandmother tried to tell me when I was little. Sometimes the old stories are true. I grew up in a fishing village where everyone knew the Tlingit legends. My grandmother would tell me about the Kushtaka, the otter men who lived in the water and stole people away. They could look like anyone you loved, she said. They'd call to you from the waves, sounding just like your mother or your brother, and if you went to help them, you'd disappear forever. I never believed her. I thought they were just stories to keep kids from drowning. I should have listened. It was early November when it started, the kind of November where the sun barely shows up, maybe 5 hours of gray light before the darkness comes back. The water was cold enough to kill you in minutes, and the wind came screaming down from the mountains at 60 miles per hour. I was stationed alone on a small island in Prince William Sound, 50 miles by boat from the nearest town. Most rangers won't take assignments this remote, but I liked it. I'd grown up around water. I knew how to handle a boat in bad weather, how to read the tides, how to survive when things went wrong. My little ranger station sat on a rocky point, surrounded by thick forest on 3 sides and the ocean on the 4th. I had a radio, a flare gun, my service revolver, and enough supplies to last a month. Every few days, I'd patrol the islands in my boat, checking the old abandoned canneries and making sure no one was fishing illegally. The only person I talked to regularly was Joseph Kayahat, a Tlingit elder who lived on the mainland. We'd chat on the radio every morning and evening. He'd taught me a lot about the traditional fishing areas and sacred sites. He never made fun of me for speaking his language, even though I wasn't very good at it. That Tuesday morning, the radio crackled to life earlier than usual. "Elena, you there?" Joseph's voice sounded tight, worried. "I'm here. What's wrong?" "Family didn't check in last night. The Johnsons, they're staying at the old cabin on Naked Island. Got 4 people, parents and 2 kids. I felt my stomach drop. Naked Island was 30 miles north, one of the most remote spots in my patrol area. "When did you last hear from them?" "Yesterday afternoon. Dave said something about hearing someone calling for help from the water. Then the radio cut out. I grabbed my jacket. I'll head up there now. Probably just radio trouble." "Elena," Joseph's voice got quiet. "The seals are gone." "What do you mean gone?" "From all the usual spots. The rocks where they always sun themselves. Empty. The otters, too. Everything's just gone." A chill ran down my back that had nothing to do with the cold. Animals don't just disappear like that. Not all at once. "I'll check it out," I said. "Call you when I get there." The boat ride took 2 hours through rough water. Rain hammered the windshield, and waves crashed over the bow. I kept thinking about what Joseph said. In 8 years out here, I'd never heard of the seals leaving their rocks. They were always there, rain or shine, barking and fighting for space. When I reached Naked Island, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No birds, no seals barking, just the wind and the waves. The Johnsons' cabin sat in a small cove protected from the worst of the weather. Their boat was still tied to the dock, rocking in the waves. Everything looked normal, until I got closer. The front door was wide open. Rain had blown inside, soaking the wooden floor. The table was set for dinner, 4 plates with food still on them, like everyone had just stood up and walked away in the middle of eating. "Hello?" I called out. "Forest Service. Anyone here?" Nothing. I stepped inside, water dripping from my jacket. The cabin was freezing. The stove was cold, had been for hours. I checked the bedrooms. Sleeping bags were laid out but not slept in. Clothes were still folded in bags. Then I saw the footprints. They were everywhere, small, wet prints tracking across the floor. At first, I thought they were from an otter. We got them in cabins sometimes looking for food. But these prints were different. They started at the door looking like normal otter tracks. But as they went deeper into the cabin, they changed. The prints got longer. The toes spread out. By the time they reached the back bedroom, they looked almost like human footprints. Small ones, child-sized, but with claws. My hand went to the revolver on my hip. I followed the prints to the back bedroom. They went right up to the window, which was open. On the windowsill, scratched deep into the wood, were marks. Not random scratches. Letters. Tlingit syllabics, the written form of the language my grandmother had tried to teach me. I could only make out two of the symbols. Together, they spelled a name. Sarah Johnson, the 8-year-old daughter. I backed out of the cabin fast, my heart pounding. Outside, I checked the beach. More prints led down to the water, human footprints and otter tracks, all mixed together, sometimes side by side, sometimes turning into each other like they couldn't decide what they were. The tracks went right into the ocean and disappeared. I pulled out my radio with shaking hands. "Joseph, you there?" Static. "Joseph, come in. This is Elena." More static. Then, faintly, a voice. But it wasn't Joseph. It was my grandmother. Her voice, exactly as I remembered it from when I was little, speaking in Tlingit. "Yea yati sitsu. They're waiting for you in the water." The radio went dead. I stood there on that empty beach, rain soaking through my clothes, staring at those impossible footprints. And for the first time in 8 years, I was truly scared. Because my grandmother had been dead for 5 years. I ran back to my boat, my boots slipping on the wet rocks. The smart thing would have been to leave right then, to radio for help from somewhere else. But 4 people were missing. A family, kids. I couldn't just leave. I spent the next 2 hours searching the island. The forest was thick and dark, full of places to hide. I called out names until my voice went hoarse. Nothing. The rain got harder, and the wind picked up. By the time I made it back to the cabin, it was getting dark. That's when I saw the clothes. Someone had arranged them on the beach in a perfect circle. Sarah's pink jacket, her brother Tommy's sneakers, the parents' rain gear, all laid out carefully, like someone was trying to tell me something. In the center of the circle was a pile of kelp, still wet and dripping. And on top of the kelp, pressed into it, like someone had used their finger to write, were more Tlingit symbols. I bent down to look closer. The symbols said, "Come swimming." I stepped back fast, looked around. The beach was empty, the forest was silent. But I had the strongest feeling that I was being watched. My radio crackled. This time it was Joseph's voice, his real voice. "Elena, get out of there, now." "Joseph, I found their clothes. There's writing. I know what you found. I talked to the elders. They say the Kushtaka clan has woken up. Something's made them angry." "Joseph, that's just a story. 4 families have gone missing in the last month. Not just the Johnsons. The Coast Guard thinks it's boat accidents, but we know better. They all disappeared the same way. Radio calls about someone needing help in the water. Then nothing. I looked out at the ocean. The waves were getting bigger, crashing white against the rocks. What do they want? Revenge, maybe. The oil spills have been poisoning the spawning grounds. The salmon runs are dying. Maybe the Kushtaka think we did it. Maybe they're right. A sound made me turn. Out in the water, maybe 50 yards from shore, I saw something. A head bobbing in the waves. Too far away to see clearly, but it looked like a person. "Hey," I shouted. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The head disappeared under the water. I waited, scanning the waves. Nothing. Maybe it had been a seal, but Joseph said the seals were gone. Then I heard it, a voice calling from the water, a child's voice. "Mommy? Mommy, help me, I'm cold." It was Sarah. I'd seen her picture on the cabin wall, 8 years old, missing her front teeth in her school photo. "Sarah?" I called back. "Where are you?" "In the water, Mommy. I'm so cold. Please help me." I started toward the water, then stopped. Something was wrong. Sarah's mother was missing too. She couldn't answer. Unless... "Sarah, where's your mom?" I called out. Silence. just the wind and waves. Then the voice came again, but different now, older. A woman's voice. Elena? Elena Volkov? Is that you? My blood went cold. That was my mother's voice. But my mother was safe at home in the village 200 miles away. Who are you? I shouted. It's Mom, honey. I fell off the boat. The water's so cold, please, you have to help me. I pulled out my radio. Joseph, I'm hearing voices. They sound like... Don't listen to them. Joseph's voice was sharp, urgent. Don't go near the water. They're trying to trick you. The woman's voice came again, closer now. Elena, please, I'm your mother. Don't leave me out here. I could see her now, a figure in the water, arms waving. Dark hair like my mom's. But she was too far out. No one could survive in water that cold, that far from shore. I raised my flashlight and pointed it at the water. The figure dove under. But not like a person diving. Like an otter, smooth and fast, barely a splash. I backed away from the water's edge. My hands were shaking. The radio crackled again. Elena, listen to me. Joseph's voice was steady, trying to keep me calm. You need to leave that island, right now. Get in your boat and... The radio cut out, not static this time, just dead silence. I looked down at it. The battery was full, the power light was on, but no sound came out, no matter which channel I tried. Then I heard the laughing, children's laughter, coming from under my boat. I walked to the edge of the dock, moving slowly. The boat was tied up tight, rocking in the waves. I pointed my flashlight down into the water. Two faces looked back at me from just below the surface. Small faces, children. Their eyes were too big, too round. Their mouths were too wide when they smiled. Sarah and Tommy Johnson. But they weren't drowning. They were swimming, playing, like the freezing water was a warm bath. I watched, frozen, as they swam circles under my boat, moving impossibly fast. Their bodies kept changing, sometimes arms, sometimes flippers, sometimes human legs, sometimes an otter's thick tail. Sarah looked up at me. When she opened her mouth, water should have rushed in. Instead, she spoke clearly. Come play with us, Elena. The water's nice. Tommy giggled. We're not cold anymore. We're never cold. I stumbled backward, nearly falling off the dock. When I looked again, they were gone. Just dark water and the reflection of my flashlight. I ran for my boat, started the engine with shaking hands, cast off the lines and gunned it toward open water. Behind me, I heard singing. Multiple voices, singing an old Tlingit fishing song, the song my grandmother used to sing. I looked back once. The beach was full of them. 20, maybe 30 figures standing at the water's edge. Some looked like people. Some looked like otters standing on their hind legs. Some looked like something in between. They all waved goodbye. The trip back to my station took 3 hours through the worst weather I'd ever seen. Waves crashed over the bow. The wind tried to push me off course. My radio stayed dead the whole way. When I finally reached my island, I pulled the boat up onto the beach and tied it extra tight. Then I went inside, locked every door and window, and sat in the dark with my gun in my lap. Outside, I could hear them, scratching at the walls, calling my name in voices I recognized. My mother, my father, my grandmother, my cousin who drowned when we were kids. All night long, they called to me, and all night long, I tried not to listen. Morning came gray and cold. The scratching had stopped sometime before dawn. I checked every window, my revolver ready. The beach was empty. My boat was still there, undamaged. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. I tried the radio again. This time I got through to Joseph. Thank God, he said. I thought we'd lost you too. Joseph, I saw them, the children. They were in the water, but they were breathing, swimming like... I know. The elders are gathering. They want to talk to you. Can they help? Do they know how to stop this? A long pause. Elena, the Kushtaka don't stop. Once they've chosen someone, they don't give up. They'll keep calling, keep trying to trick you into the water. And if you go in, I become one of them. Yes. I looked out at the ocean. In the distance, I could see shapes moving through the water. Too fast to be seals. Too purposeful to be debris. How many are there now? We don't know, but they're getting closer to the villages. Last night, they took old Mrs. Chen from her dock. She thought she heard her dead husband calling. By the time her son got there, she was already swimming away. She looked back at him once, and he said her face was changing. I sat down hard on my chair. We have to warn people. Tell them not to go near the water. We tried. Most people think we're crazy. The ones who believe us are too scared to leave their houses. My radio crackled. Another voice broke through, distant and full of static. Elena, this is Dave Johnson. Can you hear me? My hand froze on the receiver. Dave Johnson. Sarah and Tommy's father. Dave, I said carefully. Where are you? I'm at the cabin. We're all here. We've been looking for you. Where did you go? Dave, I was at your cabin yesterday. No one was there, just your clothes on the beach. Laughter on the other end. Multiple voices, adults and children. We went for a swim. It's so nice down here, Elena. You should join us. The water's perfect. I switched off the radio. It turned back on by itself. Elena. This time it was my grandmother's voice. You can't hide from us. We know where you are. We've always known. I yanked the battery out of the radio and threw it across the room. Silence. Then, from outside, I heard my name being called. I looked out the window. A figure stood on the beach. A woman in a ranger uniform just like mine. She had red hair like me. She stood the same way I stood. It was me. The other Elena waved. Then she walked backward into the ocean, never breaking eye contact. The water closed over her head, and she was gone. I checked all my doors and windows again. Everything was locked tight. I had food for 2 weeks, water for longer. I could wait this out. Help would come eventually. That's what I told myself. The sun went down early, like always. By 4 o'clock, it was almost full dark. I lit my lantern and tried to read, but I couldn't focus. Every sound made me jump. The wind, the waves, the creaking of the cabin settling. Around midnight, I heard the boat motor. I ran to the window. A fishing boat was pulling up to my dock. The name on the side said Elena's Dream. That was my father's boat. But my father's boat was in the village, in dry dock for repairs. Someone climbed out onto the dock. I couldn't see their face in the dark, but they moved like my father, walked like him. They came up toward my cabin and knocked on the door. Elena, you in there? Your mother's worried sick. Come on out, let's go home. You're not my father, I called back. Course I am. Who else would I be? Come on now, stop playing games. We need to get back before the storm hits. My father's boat is broken. You can't be him. The knocking stopped. For a long moment there was silence. Then the voice changed, got deeper, stranger. You're right, I'm not your father. The door handle rattled. But I was once. I remember being him. I remember teaching you to tie knots. Remember your first time steering the boat. You were 6 years old. Go away. I remember your mother too, and your grandmother, and everyone else we used to be. We remember everything, Elena. Every memory, every feeling. We just understand it better now. We understand that the water is everything. The water gives life. The water takes it back. That's how it should be. Something heavy hit the door. then again. The wood cracked. I grabbed my gun and backed away. "Stop, I'll shoot." Laughter. Multiple voices, all talking at once. "You can't shoot the water, Elena. You can't shoot memory. You can't shoot what you love." The door burst open. Water rushed in. Not from outside, but from nowhere. Like the ocean itself was flooding through the doorway. It poured across the floor, cold and dark and full of shapes that moved beneath the surface. I fired twice into the water. The shapes scattered, but the water kept coming. I ran for the back door, but it was already open. More water flowing in. The whole cabin was flooding, filling up impossibly fast. I climbed onto the table, then up to the rafters. The water rose below me, churning with those half-seen shapes. Faces broke the surface and submerged again. Hands reached up, grasping. "Join us, Elena. The water is home. Your grandmother is here. She wants to see you." The water touched my feet. It was freezing. Where it touched my skin, I felt something change. A pulling sensation, like it wanted to drag me down, like it wanted to make me part of itself. I pulled my feet up higher. "Joseph," I screamed. "Joseph, help me." The radio on the floor, the one with no battery, crackled to life. Joseph's voice came through, chanting in Tlingit. Old words, sacred words. The kind my grandmother had tried to teach me, but I'd never learned. The water stopped rising. The shapes in it started to pull back, retreating toward the doors. "Not yet," one of them whispered, "but soon, very soon." The water drained away as fast as it had come. In seconds, the floor was dry. The doors closed by themselves. The only evidence anything had happened was the salt smell in the air and my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold on to the rafter. I climbed down slowly, picked up the radio. "Joseph? I'm here. Are you hurt?" "No, but they almost..." "Joseph, what's happening?" "The oil spill 2 years ago, remember? It killed thousands of fish, poisoned the spawning grounds. The Kushtaka were angry before, but that made them furious. They think we're destroying their home, so now they're taking our people, making them part of the clan, growing their numbers. How do we stop them?" Another long pause. "The elders say there's only one way. Someone has to go down into the deep water, down to where the clan gathers. You have to face them there and break the binding, make them release the people they've taken. That's suicide. Probably." I looked out the window at the dark ocean. "And if I don't? They'll keep taking people. Eventually they'll come to the villages. Hundreds will die. Or worse, hundreds will join them." I sat down on my wet floor and put my head in my hands. "I'm a ranger, Joseph. I protect parks and fish. I'm not a hero. Your grandmother thought you were. My grandmother told stories. Your grandmother knew things that most people have forgotten. She taught you the old songs. She gave you her copper knife, the one you wear on your belt. You think that was an accident?" I touched the knife. It had been my grandmother's, and her grandmother's before that. Blessed copper, she'd told me, for cutting things that shouldn't exist. I don't know how to use it. You will. When the time comes, you'll know. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. Gray light spread across the water. In the distance, I could see them. Dozens of dark shapes swimming in formation, circling my island, waiting. I stood up and checked my gun. 6 bullets left. Not nearly enough. But the copper knife felt warm against my hip, like it was ready. "Tell me what I need to do," I said. Joseph talked me through the ritual. It was simple and terrifying. I had to go to the deepest water near my island, a place called the Devil's Throat, where the bottom dropped away to nothing. I had to go there at high tide, when the Kushtaka were strongest. And I had to call them, invite them to take me. "They'll come," Joseph said. "All of them. And when they do, you use the knife. You cut the bond that holds them, the spiritual connection between the stolen people and the water. It's the only way to free them. And then you swim like hell." I spent the day preparing. I put on every warm layer I owned, checked my diving mask and flippers, attached the copper knife to my wrist with a leather cord, loaded flares into my waterproof pack. At 3 o'clock, the sun started going down. High tide would be at 4. I took my boat out to the Devil's Throat. The water there was so deep it looked black, even in daylight. The current was strong, pulling everything down toward the center. I anchored the boat at the edge and sat there, watching the water. Shapes moved below. Lots of them. My radio crackled one last time. Joseph's voice. "The elders are singing for you, all of them. We'll keep singing until you come back. And if I don't come back, then we'll sing for your spirit to find peace." Not exactly encouraging. I put the radio away, checked my knife one more time. Then I stood at the edge of the boat. The water looked so cold, so dark. I thought about my grandmother, about the stories she told, about the last thing she said to me before she died. "The old ways aren't gone, Elena. They're just sleeping. But sometimes they wake up. And when they do, someone has to stand between them and the people who've forgotten." I jumped. The cold hit me like a hammer. Even through my layers, I felt it trying to pull the warmth from my body. I kicked down, swimming into the darkness. My flashlight cut through the water, showing nothing but empty ocean. Then they came. They rose from below like a nightmare. Dozens of them. Some still looked mostly human, the recently taken, like the Johnsons. Others had been part of the clan longer. Their bodies were sleek and furred. Their faces were wrong, too flat, eyes too big, mouths full of sharp teeth. And in the center of them all, leading the group, was my grandmother. She looked exactly as I remembered her, but her eyes were solid black, and when she smiled, I saw the teeth. "Ye Yati, Sitsu," she said. "Hello, my granddaughter. You finally came to visit." "Let them go," I said. My voice sounded strange underwater, but somehow they could all hear me. "The people you took, they don't belong here. They belong where we say they belong. We are the water. The water is everything." The others circled closer. Sarah Johnson was there, holding her brother's hand. Both of them smiled at me with too many teeth. Behind them, their parents, Mrs. Chen, dozens of others I didn't know. "The water is dying," my grandmother said. "Your people poison it, kill the fish, destroy the spawning grounds, so we will take your people. Make them part of us. Make them understand." "This isn't you," I said. "You loved me. You taught me. I love you now. That's why you get to choose. Join us willingly, or we take you by force. Either way, you'll understand. You'll see how beautiful it is down here." She reached for me. Her hand looked human, but when I looked closer, I saw the webbing between her fingers, the fur growing along her wrist. I grabbed the copper knife. The instant I touched it, everything changed. The knife got hot in my hand, not burning, but warm, like it was alive. And suddenly I could see things I couldn't see before. Threads of light connecting every Kushtaka to the water, binding them, holding them, making them part of something bigger than themselves. And I understood. They weren't evil. They were protecting their home the only way they knew how. But the people they'd taken, they were trapped, caught between human and otter, unable to be either. "I'm sorry," I said to my grandmother. "I'm sorry we hurt your home. I'm sorry I didn't believe you." Then I raised the knife and cut. The blade passed through the nearest thread of light. It snapped like a rubber band. The kushtaka it was attached to, Sarah Johnson, screamed. Her body convulsed, changing rapidly from otter to human to something in between. Then, suddenly, she was just a little girl, drowning. I grabbed her and kicked toward the surface. The other kushtaka went crazy. They swarmed around me, grabbing at my arms and legs. But every time they got close, I swung the knife. Every thread I cut, another person changed back. Tommy Johnson, his mother, his father, Mrs. Chen. One by one, they became human again. And one by one, they started to drown. I couldn't save them all, but I could try. I broke the surface with Sarah in my arms, threw her into the boat, dove back down for Tommy, brought him up, back down for their mother. Each time I went down, there were fewer kushtaka and more drowning people. The water thrashed with bodies, the air filled with screaming, human screams now, not the strange songs they'd been singing before. On my sixth dive, my grandmother was waiting. "You're killing them," she said. "They can't survive without the bond. They'll freeze, they'll drown. They'll be human again. They'll have a choice. Is that what you want for me? To drown? To die?" I looked at her, really looked. The thread connecting her to the water was brighter than the others, stronger. She'd been part of the clan the longest. "Grandma," I said, "you died 5 years ago. I held your hand. You were at peace. I was wrong." Her voice broke. "There's no peace in dying. Only the water. Only the clan." I raised the knife. "I love you, but I can't let you do this." She lunged at me. Her body shifted, becoming more otter than human. Teeth snapped where my throat had been a second before. I cut the thread. She screamed. Her body twisted, changing back. For just a second, she looked like my grandmother again. Really looked like her. Her eyes cleared. She saw me. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she was gone. Just bubbles rising toward the surface. I cut every thread I could find. The water turned into chaos. People everywhere choking and gasping. I pulled as many as I could toward my boat, but there were too many. The boat was full. People clung to the sides. Some went under before I could reach them. The last kushtaka, the ones I couldn't reach, fled into the deep water. Maybe a dozen of them. They called back to me in voices I almost recognized, but they were afraid now. Hurt. The clan was broken. I hauled the last person into the boat, Dave Johnson, and gunned the engine. We limped back toward my station, the boat so overloaded it barely moved. People shivered and cried. Some of them didn't know where they were, didn't remember being taken. Sarah Johnson looked at me with clear, human eyes. "Thank you," she said. "I was so scared." Behind us, the devil's throat went still. Dark water, growing darker as the sun went down. I thought I saw shapes moving in the distance, the ones who got away. But they didn't follow us. Maybe they'd learned to be afraid. Or maybe they were just waiting. The Coast Guard came at dawn. Helicopters and boats, more people than I'd seen in months. They took the survivors to hospitals on the mainland. Hypothermia, shock, trauma. But they were alive. Human. Most of them anyway. Mrs. Chen never woke up. The doctors said she'd been without oxygen too long. And 3 others, people who'd been taken weeks ago, their minds were gone. They just stared at the walls and sang. Old Tlingit fishing songs in voices that sounded like water flowing. The official report said it was a mass hypothermia event. A boat accident. People in the water too long. No one wanted to hear about kushtaka or copper knives or anything that didn't make sense. But Joseph and the elders knew. They came to visit me in the hospital, where I was recovering from exposure. They brought gifts, carved otter totems, blessed items to keep me safe. They thanked me. They also warned me. "You broke the clan," Joseph said, "but you didn't destroy it. The ones who escaped, they'll rebuild, slowly, and they'll remember you." Will they come back? Maybe. Probably not in our lifetime. But the water has a long memory. I nodded. I'd expected as much. They released me after 3 days. I went back to my station to get my things. I wasn't staying. The Forestry Service offered me a transfer, somewhere inland, far from the ocean. I took it. But before I left, I went back to the beach one last time. Stood there and looked out at the water. It was calm that day, almost peaceful. You'd never know what lived beneath the surface. I pulled out my grandmother's knife, my knife now, and held it up to the light. The copper gleamed red gold in the sunset. Along the blade, in letters so small I'd never noticed them before, were words in Tlingit. Joseph had translated them for me. To cut what should not be bound. My grandmother had known. Somehow she'd always known I'd need it. I put the knife away and turned my back on the ocean, started walking toward my truck, but halfway there I heard it, a voice calling from the water, soft, almost kind. "Elena." I didn't turn around, didn't even slow down. "We'll wait for you, Elena. We have all the time in the world, and someday you'll come back. Everyone comes back to the water eventually." I got in my truck and drove away. That was 8 months ago. I work in Denali now, in the mountains, as far from the ocean as you can get in Alaska. I protect bears and tourists, and I don't think about the water, except at night. At night, I still hear them singing. Old Tlingit songs carried on wind that smells like salt and kelp. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see my grandmother standing behind me. She smiles and mouths words I can't quite hear. I keep the copper knife under my pillow, just in case. The elders check in every week. They monitor the coastline, watch for signs. So far, nothing. The Kushtaka are quiet, hiding, healing. But Joseph was right. The water has a long memory, and someday I know they'll remember me. I saved 15 people from the devil's throat that day. 15 souls pulled back from something worse than death. Everyone calls me a hero. The governor gave me a medal. There was a ceremony and everything. But I know the truth. I didn't win. I just survived. And surviving isn't the same as being safe. Sometimes late at night when the wind is right, I still hear my grandmother's voice. She's not angry. She's just waiting. Patient. The way the ocean is patient. Because the ocean always gets what it wants. Eventually. My name is James Whitehorse, and I've spent 15 years as a ranger in Alaska. I'm Inupiat, born and raised in the Arctic, and I thought I knew every danger these frozen lands could throw at me. Bears, wolves, crevasses hidden under snow, cold that can kill you in minutes. I'd seen it all. Or so I thought. February 1982. That was when I learned my ancestors weren't telling stories to scare children. They were trying to warn us. I was 36 years old and considered one of the best wilderness rescue specialists in the state. The Army had trained me in survival tactics, but my grandmother taught me the old ways. How to read the wind, how to listen to the land, how to hunt like our people had done for thousands of years. I spoke Inupiaq as fluently as English, wore traditional mukluks my aunt had sewn, and carried a whalebone harpoon that had belonged to my grandfather. People said I could track anything. They called me whenever someone went missing in the Brooks Range. I'd find them when others gave up. It made me feel like I was doing something important, something that mattered. But there was a darker reason I never stopped searching. 12 years earlier, my older brother Thomas disappeared during an expedition into the gates of the Arctic. They never found his body, never found any trace of him at all. Every person I rescued felt like maybe I was balancing the scales somehow, making up for the one person I couldn't save. The call came in on February 14th. A scientific research team, 6 people studying Arctic climate patterns, had missed their scheduled radio check-in. That wasn't unusual. Equipment failed in the cold. Storms knocked out communications. But they were 3 weeks overdue, and their backup radio hadn't transmitted anything either. I flew out the next morning in a bush plane, the pilot dropping me as close to their last known position as he dared. The Arrogech peaks stretched below us like jagged teeth trying to bite the sky. We were 200 miles from the nearest village, above the Arctic Circle where the sun wouldn't rise for another month. 24-hour darkness, temperatures that averaged 40 below zero. "You sure about this?" the pilot asked as I gathered my gear. "Weather's supposed to get worse." "I'll be fine," I said. "I've done this 100 times." He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Later, I'd recognize it as pity. The cold hit me like a physical thing when I stepped out of the plane. Not just cold, Arctic cold that made your lungs ache, that froze the moisture in your nose, that could kill exposed skin in under a minute. The wind howled across the tundra, whipping up ground blizzards that stung like thrown needles. I'd packed for a week-long search. Emergency shelter, modern survival gear, my traditional tools, and my shortwave radio. Everything I needed to survive and rescue 6 people. The plane's engine faded into the distance, and I was alone. Not alone, I'd learn. Never alone. The base camp should have been 2 miles north. I started walking, my headlamp cutting a narrow tunnel through the absolute darkness. The snow crunched under my boots with that particular squeak it makes when it's viciously cold. My breath formed instant ice crystals that tinkled as they fell. Something felt wrong immediately, though I couldn't say what. The silence was too complete. In 15 years, I'd learned to read the Arctic like a book. There should have been sounds, the distant cry of a fox, the whisper of wind through ice formations, the crack of expanding permafrost. Instead, there was nothing, just my breathing and my footsteps. And then, so faint I almost missed it, something else. A sound like wind, but not wind, like breathing, but too slow, too deep. It came from everywhere and nowhere. I told myself it was just the katabatic winds playing tricks, cold air flowing down from the peaks. The Arctic did that sometimes, made sounds that weren't really there. I kept walking, but my hand moved to the harpoon on my back. Old habits die hard. I found the base camp just before midnight, though midnight meant nothing here in the endless dark. My headlamp swept across 3 large expedition tents, a supply cache, and various equipment scattered across the snow. Scattered wasn't the right word. Thrown, hurled, like something had exploded from inside the camp. The first tent had been shredded from the inside out, not cut, torn. Long, ragged gashes in the heavy canvas, frozen stiff in the cold. I'd seen what bear claws could do to a tent. This wasn't that. The edges were too irregular, too violent. "Hello?" I called out. "This is Park Ranger James Whitehorse. Is anyone here?" My voice died in the cold air. No echo, no response. I checked each tent methodically, documenting everything the way I'd been trained. Sleeping bags still in place, some with the zippers open like people had climbed out quickly. Personal items, books, journals, photographs left behind. The scientists' equipment was high-end stuff, Laptops, weather instruments, satellite phones. The satellite phones should have worked, should have called for help. All three had been smashed, not broken by accident or cold, smashed deliberately, crushed under what looked like a boot heel, or something shaped like a boot. In the supply tent, I found something that made my stomach clench. The food stores had been ransacked, but not by an animal. Cans had been opened with a knife, freeze-dried meals torn from their packages, and on the frozen meat they'd brought, caribou I guessed, there were bite marks, human bite marks, but the teeth were wrong, too large. The canines had left deep punctures, much deeper than a normal human could make. I pulled out my radio and tried to call in. Static. I adjusted the frequency, tried again. More static, but this time I heard something underneath it. A sound like wind, like breathing, like a voice saying words I couldn't quite make out. The radio screamed, just for a second, a high-pitched shriek that made me drop it in the snow. Then silence. The radio was dead, the battery drained despite being fully charged when I'd arrived. I stood in that destroyed camp as the Arctic wind picked up, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a child. True fear. The tracks leading away from camp spiraled outward in a pattern that made no sense. Not the confused wandering of hypothermia victims, not the purposeful march of people seeking shelter. These looked almost decorative, like someone had walked in circles for the joy of it. And mixed among the boot prints were others, bare feet, in 40 below weather, bare feet that left prints with elongated toes and what looked like claws. I followed the clearest trail north. After a quarter mile I found a parka, then a pair of snow pants, then thermal underwear, each piece discarded like someone was shedding a skin they no longer needed. People dying of hypothermia sometimes did this. Paradoxical undressing, they called it. A dying brain misfiring, making victims feel hot when they were freezing to death. But there were 6 scientists. They couldn't all have gotten hypothermia at the same time. The trail led to a small canyon carved by ancient glaciers. My headlamp illuminated ice walls that glittered like diamonds. Beautiful, deadly, and there, frozen into the ice of the canyon wall, was a body. I approached slowly, my heart hammering. It was one of the researchers. I could tell by the remnants of expedition gear frozen to his torso, but everything else was wrong. He'd been a man once. Now he was something stretched and distorted. His body was impossibly thin, like something had sucked all the fat and muscle away, leaving just skin stretched over bone. His fingers had elongated into claws. His mouth hung open, revealing yellowed teeth that were far too long, far too sharp. His eyes were open. They were solid white, frozen over with cataracts of ice. And as my light passed across his face, I swear to God, those frozen eyes moved. Just a flicker, just for a second. I stumbled backward, my hand going to my harpoon. My breath came in rapid gasps that formed clouds of ice crystals in the air. "It's just the cold," I said aloud. "Bodies do strange things when they freeze. You know this." But I didn't believe it, and neither did my ancestors, who had words for this. Words I'd learned as a child and dismissed as superstition. Wendigo, the hunger that walks, the spirit of starvation and cold that transforms men into monsters. Southern Indian stories, I muttered, backing away from the canyon. Not real. Not possible. Behind me, something crunched in the snow. I spun, my headlamp catching nothing but swirling snow and darkness. But I'd heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. "Who's there?" I called. "I'm a park ranger. I'm here to help." The wind answered, but underneath it was that breathing again. Slow, deep, hungry. I ran. I'm not proud of it, but I ran. Back toward the camp, my headlamp bouncing wildly, my lungs burning in the frozen air. Behind me, I heard those footsteps keeping pace, not hurrying, not chasing, following. I made it back to the camp and dove into the least damaged tent, zipping it closed like that would do any good. My hands shook as I set up my emergency shelter, a small dome that I could heat with a chemical warmer. The footsteps circled the tent, once, twice, 3 times. Then they stopped. I sat in that tiny space, my harpoon across my lap, and waited for dawn that wouldn't come. I didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Every sound made me grip my harpoon tighter. The wind, the tent fabric crackling in the cold, the sound of my own breathing, and once, maybe twice, that slow, deep breathing from outside. When my watch said it was morning, though the sky remained as black as midnight, I forced myself to move. I had to find the other researchers, had to figure out what happened, had to do my job, even if every instinct screamed at me to call for extraction. Except my radio was dead, and the satellite phones were smashed, and I was 200 miles from help. I packed my gear and stepped outside. The tracks from last night were gone, erased by wind and blowing snow. But there were new tracks, lots of them, all around my tent, bare feet with elongated toes. They'd been watching me all night. I followed the tracks east, toward a series of ice caves my grandmother had told me about. Sacred places, she'd said, places where the old spirits dwelt, places you didn't go in winter. The caves opened like mouths in the side of a ridge. My headlamp showed ice formations that looked like teeth, like ribs, like the interior of some vast frozen beast. The tracks led inside. I should have turned back, should have hiked to the nearest village even if it took a week, should have abandoned the mission. But I heard something from deep in the cave. A voice, weak, human. Help, please. I went in. The cave narrowed quickly, forcing me to crouch. The ice walls pressed close on either side, covered in a film of frost that sparkled in my light. The temperature dropped even further, 50 below, maybe more. My breath formed thick clouds. The voice came again, closer now. Help me, I'm so hungry. I rounded a corner and found him. Dr. William Peterson, according to the manifest I'd reviewed. 32 years old, climatologist from Seattle. He sat against the ice wall, hugging his knees, rocking back and forth. He looked normal. No elongated limbs, no claws, no yellowed teeth. Dr. Peterson? I approached slowly. I'm James Whitehorse, park ranger. I'm here to get you out. He looked up at me, and I saw tears, frozen on his cheeks. Thank God, thank God. I thought I was alone. I thought it had taken everyone. What happened to your team? Something in the dark, he whispered. Something that got into Sarah first. She started acting strange about 4 weeks ago. Couldn't stop eating. We'd feed her, and she'd still be hungry. And then she changed. Changed how? She got taller, thinner, her teeth. He shuddered. Her teeth got long, and she started looking at us differently, like we were food. I knelt beside him, checking for injuries. He seemed intact, just cold and frightened. Where are the others? Deeper in the cave. They're all deeper in the cave. Sarah took them, one by one. I'm the only one left. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. You have to get me out of here, please, before she comes back. Okay, I said. Can you walk? Yes, I think so. He stood, leaning heavily on me. We started back toward the cave entrance. Behind us, from deeper in the darkness, I heard a sound like laughter, cold, inhuman. Peterson heard it too. He went rigid. "She's coming," he whispered. "Oh God, she's coming." "Move," I said, pushing him forward. "Move now." We stumbled through the narrow passage, my headlamp bouncing wildly. Behind us, the laughter grew louder, echoing off the ice walls. And underneath it, that breathing, that terrible, slow breathing. The cave entrance appeared ahead, a gray circle of lesser darkness, 20 feet, 10 feet. Peterson screamed. I spun and saw something behind us, tall, impossibly tall, having to crouch in the passage. Its skin was gray-white, like ice. Its eyes glowed with a pale, hungry light. And its mouth, God, its mouth was full of teeth. "Run!" I shoved Peterson toward the entrance and pulled my harpoon free. The thing moved forward with unnatural speed, its two long arms reaching. I thrust the harpoon into its chest, putting all my strength behind it. The bone point pierced its skin, and then hit something solid. The creature didn't bleed. Instead, frost formed around the wound, sealing it instantly. It looked down at the harpoon, then at me, and it smiled. "So hungry," it said in a voice like grinding ice. "Always. So hungry." I abandoned the harpoon and ran. Peterson was already outside, stumbling through the snow. I grabbed him, and we ran together, heading south, away from the caves, away from that thing. We ran until my lungs felt like they'd frozen solid, until Peterson collapsed in the snow, until I couldn't take another step. I pulled him into a shallow depression and covered us both with an emergency blanket, trying to conceal our heat signature. We lay there, gasping as the wind howled overhead. "It's not human anymore," Peterson whispered. "Sarah's not human. None of them are. It's like they became something else. Something that only wants to eat." "How many are there?" I asked. 5. Sarah took 5 of us. Changed us. I'm the only one left. I'm the only one who... He stopped, his whole body shaking. "Who what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me with an expression of terrible hunger. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. But I can't help it anymore." His eyes began to change, the pupils expanding until they were solid black. His teeth started to elongate. The transformation had already begun. I didn't wait to see more. I rolled out from under the blanket and ran again, alone this time, into the endless Arctic night. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. Then I walked. And when I couldn't walk, I crawled. The cold bit into me, but fear kept me moving. Behind me, I heard howling, not wolves, but something that had once been human, calling to its pack. They were hunting me. I needed shelter. I needed fire. I needed a plan. My grandmother's voice came back to me. Memories from childhood. Stories told during the long winter nights. "The Wendigo awakens in the darkest winters," she'd said. "When the sun abandons us. When the cold gets into your bones. It starts with hunger, hunger that never ends, no matter how much you eat. And then the spirit takes you, and you become the hunger itself." "How do you stop it?" I'd asked. "You don't," she'd said. "You survive. You stay human. You never ever give in to the hunger." But there was something else she'd told me. Something about the old hunting shelters. The sacred places where our ancestors had made offerings to the spirits of the land. Places of power. I changed direction, heading west toward where I remembered one of those shelters being. A small structure built from whalebone and stone, half buried in a ridge. My grandfather had taken me there once, had shown me the old symbols carved into the bone. "In the worst times," he'd said, "this is where we'd come." The spirits here are stronger. They can fight the hunger. I found it just as my headlamp began to fade, the battery dying in the cold. The shelter was barely more than a cave with a whalebone frame, but it was defensible. One entrance, thick walls. I crawled inside and found the remnants of old offerings, carved bone, ancient harpoon points, fragments of sinew rope. My grandfather's harpoon, the one I'd lost in the cave. No, not lost. It had found its way here, waiting for me. I picked it up, and the bone was warm to the touch despite the killing cold. Outside, the howling grew closer. I could see shapes moving in the darkness, tall and thin, circling the shelter. 5 of them, the entire research team, transformed into monsters. The largest one approached the entrance. It had to crouch to fit, and in the dying light of my headlamp, I saw its face. Sarah, Peterson had said, the first to change. "Join us," she said, her voice like ice cracking. "The hunger ends when you accept it. No more cold, no more pain, just the hunt, just the feed, forever." "I'm Inupiat," I said, gripping the harpoon. "My people have fought your kind for 10,000 years. You don't scare me." That was a lie. I was terrified. She laughed and reached into the shelter, her arm extended impossibly long, clawed fingers reaching for my face. I thrust the harpoon into her palm, driving the bone point through and pinning her hand to the earth. She shrieked, a sound like breaking ice, like dying animals, like the wind at the end of the world. She pulled back, and the harpoon came free, leaving frost-burned flesh behind. "Consecrated bone," I said, remembering my grandmother's words. "Carved with the old symbols, blessed by shamans. You can't heal from that." She retreated, and the others closed in. 5 of them. 1 of me. 1 ancient harpoon. I was going to die here, but I'd die human. They rushed the entrance together, their bodies blocking out what little light remained. I fought in the darkness, thrusting the harpoon blindly, feeling it strike home again and again. They screamed and tore at me, their claws raking across my parka, their teeth snapping inches from my face. And then I remembered the other offerings, the dried sinew rope, the old fire-starting tools. I grabbed the rope with my free hand and struck sparks from the ancient flint. Once, twice. The 3rd time the spark caught, and the sinew rope burst into flame. The Wendigo recoiled from the fire, hissing. Not because it would burn them, they were beyond such things, but because fire was sacred. Fire was human. Fire was everything they'd abandoned. I lit more offerings, building a ring of flame around the entrance. The oldest stories, the ones my grandmother had whispered, came back to me. Not just any fire, sacred fire. Fire fed by holy things. Fire blessed by the spirits of the land. The flames burned blue and white, brighter than they should have, hotter than any natural fire. "You have to choose," I said to them. And I wasn't sure if I was talking to the monsters or to whatever remained of the people they'd been. "You have to choose to be human, or you can burn." For a moment, nothing happened. Then one of them, the smallest, the one who'd been Dr. Peterson, stepped into the flames. He screamed. The fire consumed him, and where it touched, the ice-gray skin cracked and fell away. Beneath it, I saw normal human skin, normal human features. He looked at me with clear brown eyes. "Thank you," he said. Then he was gone, the flames taking him completely. The others hesitated. Sarah, their leader, looked from the fire to me and back again. "Better to burn than to hunger forever," I said softly. One by one, they stepped into the flames. One by one, they became human again in their final moments. One by one, they thanked me and let go. Sarah was last. She stood at the edge of the fire, her twisted features softening. "I'm so sorry," she said. "We didn't know. We didn't understand until it was too late." "I know," I said. She stepped into the fire, and the hunger finally ended. They found me 3 days later, unconscious and half frozen in that whalebone shelter. The rescue team said I'd lost 3 fingers on my left hand to frostbite. They said I was lucky to be alive. They didn't ask too many questions about the 6 bodies they found scattered around the shelter, burned so badly they were barely recognizable. Equipment failure, they decided. A stove malfunction. Tragic accident. I didn't correct them. I told them I'd found the research team already dead from exposure, that I'd tried to keep them warm but failed, that I'd gotten trapped in a blizzard and barely survived myself. They believed me, or they pretended to believe me. Maybe they'd seen things too in their years in the Arctic. Maybe they knew better than to ask questions that had answers you didn't want to hear. I never went back to full ranger duties. The cold bothered me now in ways it never had before. Not just the physical cold, but the spiritual cold. The emptiness. I could feel it in the wind. That ancient hunger, always waiting for the right moment to wake. I moved to my grandmother's village, took a position as an elder, started teaching the young people the old stories. Not as entertainment, as warnings. The Wendigo is real, I tell them. It's always been real. It's what happens when people forget how to be human, when hunger becomes more important than community, when survival becomes more important than compassion. They listen better than I did at their age. Sometimes on the darkest winter nights, I still hear that breathing on the wind, that slow, deep, hungry breathing. And I remember Sarah's final words. We didn't understand until it was too late. That's the thing about monsters. They're not something that happens to you. They're something you become, choice by choice, hunger by hunger, until one day you wake up and you're not human anymore. I look at my remaining 7 fingers and count my blessings. 3 fingers is a small price to pay for staying human. I keep my grandfather's harpoon above my door, the bone still marked with burn stains from sacred fire. Just in case the hunger walks again, and someone needs to know how to fight it, because it's still out there, in the Brooks Range, in the endless Arctic night, waiting for the next person who loses their way, the next person who forgets what it means to be human. I'll be ready. I have to be, because I know what my brother Thomas became 12 years ago in those frozen peaks. I saw him that night, standing at the edge of the firelight, his tall, thin form unmistakable, even transformed. He didn't step into the flames. He chose the hunger. And somewhere in the darkness of the Arctic winter, he's still walking, still hunting, still waiting for the next person, foolish enough to venture into the gates of the Arctic when the sun has abandoned the world. I hope he never finds them, but if he does, I hope they remember the old stories. I hope they know how to fight. I hope they remember to stay human, no matter how hungry they get. Because that's all that stands between us and the walking hunger. That's all that ever has. My name is David Strongeagle, and I need to tell you what happened to me in the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. I'm a park ranger, been one for 10 years now. I grew up in the Aleutian Islands, and my grandmother used to tell me stories about things that lived in the steam and fog. I never believed her. I studied volcanoes in college. I believed in science, in things you could measure and test. That was before August of 1989. Katmai National Park in Alaska is one of the loneliest places on Earth. The valley where I worked sits on top of active volcanic vents, cracks in the ground where steam and heat come pouring out from deep below. The air always smells like rotten eggs from the sulfur. The ground is covered in gray ash that crunches under your boots. Nothing grows there. It's like walking on the moon. I loved it. My job was to monitor the volcanic activity and study the brown bears. The bears are usually everywhere in August, fishing for salmon in the rivers. But that summer, something was different. The bears stayed away from the valley. All of them. Even though the rivers were full of fish, the bears wouldn't go near the steaming vents. I should have paid attention to that. On August 15th, a film crew came to document the volcanic landscape. There were 4 of them: Jim Patterson, the director, his wife Sarah, and 2 camera operators, Mike and Chen. Nice people, excited to be there. Jim kept talking about how the footage would be amazing, how the steam rising from the vents looked like the earth was breathing. I gave them the safety talk. Stay away from the vents, the gases can kill you. Watch for unstable ground. Keep your radio on at all times. They nodded and smiled, eager to get started. I dropped them off near the fumarole field at 8 in the morning. The plan was simple. They'd film for 6 hours, then I'd pick them up at 2. The weather was clear. 16 hours of daylight in the Alaska summer. Nothing could go wrong. At 2 o'clock, I drove back to get them. They weren't there. Their van was parked where I'd left it, doors open. I called on the radio. Nothing. I walked toward the steam vents, calling their names. The sulfur fog was thicker than usual, hanging low over the ground like a blanket. That's when I found the camera. It was sitting on a rock next to one of the vents, still running. But something was wrong with it. The metal casing was melted and twisted, like someone had held it over a flame. But the camera itself was still recording, still working. My hands shook as I picked it up and looked at the screen. The footage showed Jim and Sarah standing near a vent. They were smiling, pointing at something in the steam. Then Sarah turned to look at Jim, and her face changed. Not like an expression changing. Her actual face shifted and moved, like clay being reshaped by invisible hands. In 3 seconds, she wasn't Sarah anymore. She was someone else entirely. A woman I'd never seen before. On the video, Jim didn't notice. He kept filming. Then Jim's face started to change too. I dropped the camera. It clattered on the rocks, but I barely heard it over the sound of my own breathing. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. There had to be an explanation. Volcanic gases can cause hallucinations. Maybe I was seeing things. Maybe the heat had damaged the recording somehow, distorted it. I picked up the camera again and kept watching. The 2 people who weren't Jim and Sarah anymore walked closer to the vent. They were laughing. Then they stepped into the steam and vanished. Just gone. Like they'd never existed. I rewound the footage and watched it again. And again. It didn't change. I radioed back to the main station. "This is Strong Eagle. I need helicopter support at the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. Film crew is missing. Possible gas exposure emergency." The response crackled back. "Weather's moving in. Can't fly until tomorrow morning. Can you secure the area and wait?" I looked at the melted camera in my hands, at the steam rising from the vents, at the footprints in the ash that led to the vent and didn't lead away. "Yeah," I said, "I can wait." I set up my tent a safe distance from the vents and tried to think scientifically about what I'd seen. Volcanic gases include carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide. All of them can cause confusion, hallucinations, even unconsciousness. Maybe the crew had breathed too much gas and wandered off. Maybe they were lying somewhere nearby, passed out. I searched until dark. I found their backpacks, their water bottles, even Sarah's wedding ring sitting on a rock. But no bodies, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Just their clothes, arranged in a circle around the largest vent, like someone had carefully placed them there as an offering. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing things in the darkness, footsteps crunching on ash, voices calling my name. But when I looked outside the tent, there was nothing. Just steam rising in the moonlight and the smell of sulfur. At dawn, I started searching again. The helicopter couldn't come until the afternoon, so I had time. I took my camera and my gas detector and headed deeper into the fumarole field. The detector kept going crazy near the vents, beeping warnings about dangerous gas levels. But something else was wrong too. The readings were impossible. The temperature would spike from 60 degrees to 200 degrees in seconds, then drop back down. The gas composition kept changing in ways that made no sense. I photographed everything. That's what I do. I document. I take pictures. I write notes. I stay calm and scientific even when things don't make sense. Near the largest vent, I found more footprints, but these were strange. They started out as boot prints, Jim's boots. I recognized the tread pattern. But after a few steps, they changed, got smaller, changed shape entirely. Then they weren't boots at all. They were bare feet. Then they were something else, something with too many toes. I knelt down to photograph them, and that's when I heard Sarah's voice behind me. "David, is that you?" I spun around so fast I almost fell. Sarah Patterson was standing 20 feet away, looking confused and scared. She was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, but they were clean. No ash, no dirt, like she'd just put them on. "Sarah," I ran toward her. "Thank God. Where's Jim? Where are the others?" She blinked at me slowly. "Jim? Who's Jim?" I stopped. "Your husband, the director. You came here with him yesterday." She tilted her head, like a dog hearing a strange sound. "I don't have a husband." The way she said it made my skin crawl. Her voice was right. Her face was right. But something behind her eyes was wrong. Like someone was looking out through her. Someone who didn't quite know how to be human. "Sarah, you might have breathed some bad gas. Let me help you." "My name isn't Sarah," she said. Then she smiled. "I don't know why I'm wearing this face. It's uncomfortable." She raised her hand and touched her cheek, and her face rippled, like water when you drop a stone in it. Her features blurred and shifted and reformed into someone else entirely. A man I'd never seen before, middle-aged, with a beard. Then that face melted away too, and she was Sarah again. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My brain was screaming that this wasn't possible, that I was hallucinating, that volcanic gases were making me see things. But my gas detector wasn't beeping. The air was clean. "What are you?" I whispered. The thing wearing Sarah's face smiled wider. "I'm hungry. I haven't had a new shape in so long. The film crew was nice, but they're used up now. Empty. But you're full of yourself. All those memories, all those thoughts. I can taste them from here." It started walking toward me. I ran. I've never been so scared in my life. I ran through the ash field, slipping and stumbling, while behind me I could hear footsteps. But they sounded wrong. Sometimes they sounded like boots, sometimes like bare feet, sometimes like something that shouldn't be walking on two legs at all. I made it to my truck and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. Through the windshield I saw the Sarah thing standing at the edge of the vent field, watching me. It waved. Then it turned and walked straight into the steam, and was gone. I drove back to my tent and grabbed the radio. "This is Strong Eagle, emergency. I need immediate evacuation. Something's wrong here, something..." Static crackled. Then a voice came through. My voice, calm and professional. "This is Strong Eagle, false alarm. Film crew located safe and sound. Disregard previous emergency call." "That's not me," I shouted into the radio. "I didn't say that." More static then. "Ranger Strong Eagle, please confirm your status." "I'm at my tent. The thing on the radio isn't me." A long pause. Then, "We're showing your radio signal at 2 locations. That's impossible. What's your current situation?" I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped. Through my tent window, I could see someone walking toward me through the ash. Someone wearing my uniform. Someone with my face. It was me, walking toward my own tent. And it was smiling in a way I never smile. I grabbed my truck keys and ran. I drove 50 miles to the nearest ranger station. When I got there, nobody believed me. "David, you look exhausted," Ranger Morrison said. He was my supervisor, a good guy, but he thought I'd been breathing too much sulfur. Gas exposure can cause vivid hallucinations. You know that better than anyone. "I'm not hallucinating." I showed him the camera footage. "Look at this. Their faces change. They walk into the steam and disappear." Morrison watched the video twice. "The footage is corrupted. Heat damage to the recording medium. It happens." "What about the radio transmission?" My voice calling from 2 places. "Equipment malfunction. David, I'm pulling you out of the field. You need rest." But I couldn't rest. I couldn't stop thinking about what that thing had said. "I'm hungry. I haven't had a new shape in so long." That night I called my grandmother's sister, Anna. She was 90 years old, one of the last elders who still remembered the old stories. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Agayat," she said. "The shapeshifter. We have stories about it. It lives in the places where the earth bleeds, hot springs, volcanic vents. It eats people's souls and wears their skins. Your grandmother tried to warn you." "How do I stop it?" "You don't. You leave. You seal the area and never go back." 4 people are dead, Anna. Maybe more. I can't just leave." Another long silence. "There is one way, but it requires you to believe in things your science cannot measure. Can you do that?" I thought about the thing wearing Sarah's face. The thing wearing my face. Yes. She told me what I needed to do. The next morning I went back to the valley. Morrison had forbidden it, but I didn't care. I brought everything Anna had told me to bring. Obsidian blades made from volcanic glass, blessed with traditional ceremonies. Herbs that my grandmother used to burn. And something else, my willingness to believe. The valley was different now. The steam was thicker, swirling in patterns that hurt to look at. The smell wasn't just sulfur anymore. It was rot and smoke and something sweet and wrong. I saw them at the edge of the largest vent. Jim, Sarah, Mike, and Chen. All 4 of them, standing in a row, staring at me. But their movements were synchronized, like puppets on the same string. They all tilted their heads at the same angle. All smiled at the same time. "David," they said together in one voice, "we've been waiting for you." Their faces started to change. Jim became an old woman. Sarah became a child. Mike became something that was almost human, but not quite. Eyes too far apart, mouth too wide. Then they all became me. 4 copies of David Strong Eagle standing in a row. "We like this shape," they said with my voice. "So many memories, so much pain. Your parents drowning in the fishing accident, your guilt for surviving, delicious." I wanted to run again, but Anna's voice echoed in my head. It feeds on fear. Stand your ground. I pulled out the obsidian blade. It was black and sharp and seemed to drink in the light. You can't have me. All four of them laughed. We already do. We're wearing your face. We're thinking your thoughts. We're becoming you. They started walking toward me, moving in perfect unison. Behind them, the steam from the vent was swirling faster, forming shapes. I saw more faces in the steam, dozens of them, hundreds, maybe more. All the people the shapeshifter had consumed over the years. All the souls it had stolen. I started chanting the words Anna had taught me. Old words in a language I barely understood. The things that looked like me stopped walking. Their faces twisted in pain. Stop that, they hissed. Those words hurt. I chanted louder. The obsidian blade grew warm in my hand. The steam around the vent started to pull back, like something was sucking it down into the earth. The four figures in front of me started to melt. Their bodies ran like wax, pooling on the ground. But they didn't disappear. Instead, they merged together into one huge shape. It rose up, 10 feet tall, made of steam and ash and something dark that pulsed like a heart. This was the real shapeshifter. No human disguise. Just pure hunger given form. It lunged at me. The shapeshifter moved faster than anything that size should move. 1 second it was 10 feet away. The next it was on top of me, wrapping around me like cold smoke. I felt it reaching inside my mind, pulling at my memories, trying to tear out my soul. I saw my whole life flash before my eyes, but not like people say. It wasn't beautiful or meaningful. The shapeshifter was ripping through my memories like someone tearing pages from a book. My childhood, my parents, my grandmother's stories. It wanted all of it. I slashed at it with the obsidian blade. The blade passed through the smoke but left a trail of sparks. The shapeshifter screamed, a sound like metal tearing, like the earth cracking open. It pulled back for a moment. That moment was enough. I kept chanting. The words got easier, like my grandmother was speaking through me, like all my ancestors were standing behind me, lending me their strength. The shapeshifter tried to change shape again, cycling through every person it had ever consumed. I saw the film crew. I saw faces from the 1800s from earlier. I saw people in traditional Unangan clothing, their eyes empty and pleading. I saw hunters and explorers and tourists, hundreds of souls trapped inside this thing. Let them go, I shouted. The shapeshifter laughed. They're mine. They're part of me now, just like you'll be. It rushed at me again. This time I didn't run. I stood my ground and stabbed the obsidian blade straight into the center of its mass. The blade sank in like it was piercing something solid. The shapeshifter shrieked and thrashed. Steam exploded outward. The ground shook. Behind me, the vent erupted in a column of fire and ash. I held onto the blade with both hands and kept chanting. The words poured out of me in a rush now, building to a crescendo. I felt something breaking, not the shapeshifter, but the barrier between our world and wherever it came from, the place where it had been feeding for so long. The faces in the steam started to fade. One by one, they disappeared, and I felt them go, not dying, but being released, freed. The souls the shapeshifter had stolen were finally going home. But the shapeshifter wasn't done. It wrapped around me one more time, trying to drag me down into the vent with it. I felt myself being pulled toward the heat and the darkness. The obsidian blade was still buried in its center, but I was losing my grip. If I go, you come with me, it hissed in my ear. I thought about my grandmother, about the stories she'd told me that I'd never believed, about how she'd said that some things are older than science, older than understanding. about how sometimes you have to have faith. I let go of the blade. For a second, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. I was falling, tumbling toward the vent. The shapeshifter was pulling me down into the earth where I'd burn and dissolve and become nothing. Then something caught me. Not physically. I felt hands that weren't there, holding me back. I felt my grandmother's presence and my parents, and all the ancestors I'd never known. They were pulling me back, away from the edge. The shapeshifter screamed one more time. Then it was sucked down into the vent like water down a drain. The obsidian blade went with it, glowing red hot. The ground rumbled and shook. The vent sealed itself with a sound like a door slamming shut. Then everything was quiet. I lay in the ash, breathing hard, alive. The steam was gone. The sulfur smell was gone. Even the wrong feeling in the air was gone. The valley felt clean for the first time since I'd arrived. In the distance, I heard a helicopter. They found me unconscious near the sealed vent. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The official report said I'd been exposed to toxic gases and had suffered severe hallucinations. The film crew was listed as missing, presumed dead from gas exposure. Their bodies were never found. Morrison came to see me before I was released. "David, I'm sorry. We should have taken your concerns more seriously. The gas levels in that area were off the charts. You're lucky to be alive." I didn't argue. What could I say? That I'd fought a shapeshifter from another dimension? That I'd used ancient magic to seal it away? They'd never believe me. Hell, I barely believed it myself. But I knew the truth. The day after I got out of the hospital, Anna came to visit me. She took one look at me and nodded. "You did it. I can see the change in you." "What change?" "You believe now. Really believe. You can't go back to being the man you were before." She was right. I couldn't. I tried to go back to my ranger work, but it was different. I could feel things now that I couldn't feel before. I could sense when the earth was uneasy, when the spirits were restless. I could hear the old stories in the wind and the water. After 2 months, I put in for a transfer. I couldn't work in the field anymore, not the way I used to. Instead, I took a position in cultural preservation, working with the tribal elders to document traditional knowledge. I help younger rangers understand that there's more to this land than what you can measure with instruments. And I watch. Because the vent that sealed itself that day, it's starting to show activity again. Small tremors, rising heat. The bears are avoiding that area again. I don't know if I trapped the shapeshifter forever or just delayed it. I don't know if there are others like it in other vents, other hot springs, other places where the earth bleeds. But I know I'll be ready if it comes back. My grandmother used to say that some doors should never be opened, and some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed again. You can only watch them and hope the locks hold. I think about the film crew sometimes, about Jim and Sarah and Mike and Chen, about how they came to Alaska to film something beautiful and found something terrible instead, about how they're gone now, their souls released, but their families will never know what really happened to them. I think about all the other souls the shapeshifter consumed over the centuries, all those people who vanished near hot springs and volcanic vents, written off as accidents or mysterious disappearances. How many of them were taken by the same thing that almost took me? Some nights I dream about the vent, about steam rising and faces forming in the fog, about something hungry waiting in the dark beneath the earth, and I wake up and check the seismic reports, looking for signs that the seal is weakening. My name is David Strongeagle. I'm a park ranger and a keeper of old knowledge, and I'm watching the places where two worlds meet, where science ends and something older begins. because the shapeshifter isn't the only thing out there. My grandmother told me stories about others. Things in the deep forests, things in the ocean trenches, things that have been here longer than we have and will be here long after we're gone. Most people don't believe in them. I didn't either once, but I believe now. And if you ever visit Katmai National Park, stay away from the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. Don't go near the steaming vents. Don't breathe the fog. And if you see someone who looks familiar but feels wrong, if their face seems to shift when you're not looking directly at it, run. Run and don't look back. Some doors should stay closed. Some hungers should never be fed. And some places belong to things that aren't human and never were. I learned that the hard way. I hope you never have to learn it at all.